All right, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Sorry about how that went down. Let me share the PowerPoint again. All right. Anthony, does everything look right now?
Looks great, Glenn.
All right. So, where were we? Where we were was I talked to you about what mental fitness is and who I am. And mental fitness is the science-backed method for improving your capacity to do whatever you have to do, facing challenges like the one I just had to face with a positive attitude rather than a negative attitude and a negative mindset. Want you to know Anthony passed the test. Good mental fitness on Anthony's part here. And um, I want you to think of this as like a new mind first approach to improve safety culture with practical skills anyone can learn. And as we think about this, imagine it's like you have two brains. Okay. You have one brain that reacts to situations like the one I just had to deal with a negative mindset and gets all worked up and struggles with it. And then the other is like it reacts with a positive mindset. So I want you to think about the different kinds of challenges that you have at co-ops every single day. An extremely angry member calls in and wants to complain. You're new and you see a supervisor skipping a key safety step and it doesn't feel right to speak up. What do? You're doing a task that requires focus, but you've done it 1,000 times and your mind starts to wander to a tough conversation that you had with your teenager last night. Or maybe you're behind schedule and feeling a lot of pressure to skip some safety steps to catch up. Challenges like these happen every day, and how we respond matters, and it's a part of our culture. Here's the neuroscience. It's like we have these two brains, and part of the brain is where we react to challenges with the positive mindset, and part of the brain is where we react with a negative mindset. When we have neural pathways that when something happens, we take neural pathways to either one region of the brain or the other. And the more often we take the neural pathways to our positive regions of the brain, the safer we're going to be and the happier we're going to be. Now, the ROI of building mental fitness, no matter what the industry, is that performance under pressure improves, well being improves, adaptability to change improves, and teams become more cohesive. To explain how mental fitness can help you build a strong safety culture, I want to start by exploring with you some common challenges co-ops face building and sustaining strong safety cultures. What's a culture anyway? Experts will say it's something like organizational culture is the system of shared values, beliefs, practices, and behavioral patterns that shape how people behave and interact within a company or group, better known as how things get done around here. One of my favorite definitions of culture is from a guy named Seth Godin. And he says, culture is simply people like us do things like this. And according to the experts, there's 8 different elements that make up a strong organizational culture. And I put them in your handout so you can think about your co-op safety culture and which of these are strong, which might be weak. What is undeniable is that cultures don't sustain excellence or improve weaknesses without intentional effort and attention. In fact, I want to zero in on the top 5 challenges to a strong safety culture that I discovered in my research for this keynote. And as I go through each challenge, put a check mark by the one you personally think rises to the top at your co-op. This is the first one is strong cultural resistance to new safety practices and mindsets. We are creatures of habit. We get used to doing things a certain way, and we typically don't like it when people mess with that. This is a very normal reaction to change, and it needs to be completely addressed and competently addressed and worked through in order for a culture to thrive. The second challenge is the stubbornly consistent rates of electrical contact incidents. You're doing great training, and in spite of that, incidents still happen. And the research I saw said about the same rate as always. An analysis of the data and tracking of electrical contact incidents pegs non-fatal injuries at 4,000 a year. Um, and it's stayed kind of steady. That persistence in these incidents suggests the problem is more than just technical knowledge or equipment failures, but it includes fundamental aspects of how humans perform and decision making and behavioral decisions that we make. The challenge is there, consistent incident rates. The third is workforce demographics and the significant impact of that on the knowledge transfer of safety procedures and the core values that drive them. And this makes communicating your culture harder than it was in the past. Different generations view things differently. They communicate very differently. And this makes passing along the story of your safety culture from one generation to the next complicated. The fourth challenge involves the alarming mental health trends for high-risk utility workers. It's well documented that mental health issues are rapidly charting up and to the right, with important implications for both well-being and safety. In fact, one study reported that 31% of utility workers continue working despite experiencing mental illness. At the workshop I provided for MREA earlier this summer, we focused on whole person safety, which includes psychological safety and the ability to regulate our emotions. And traditionally, mental health and emotions have not been topics we talk about in co-ops, which makes it very hard to address now, but we have to. The fifth challenge involves complex regulatory compliance and the significant resource demands that puts on a co-op. The size and scope of regulatory compliance you have to deal with and navigate requires significant time, energy, and resources, and it leaves precious little time left over for building and sustaining safety culture, which also requires time, energy, and resources. So we've got one pole, compliance, pitting itself against the other pole, time and energy and resources to build safety culture. And they pit against each other and rub up against each other. Now, what I'd like you to do for the next 10 minutes is at your location, discuss these three questions you see on the screen. Um, which of these challenges rises to the top for your co-op? So when you think about those 5 challenges, what's your gut tell you is the top one at your co-op? And I'd like you to talk about it. If your group's small enough, you can do that conversation together. If not, get into groups of like 3, 4, or 5 and talk about it. What's the top one? What indicators point you to make that conclusion? And what's the impact of this challenge to your safety culture? So go ahead, get in groups. You got 10 minutes. Go ahead and start talking about that. You'll see the clock in the corner. That's when the time will run out. And work it through. If you're by yourself, just grab a sheet of paper and journal a little bit and answer these 3 questions for yourself and think about what is it at your co-op of those 5 challenges you have to fight or contend with the most. I'll see you in about 9 minutes. All right. Go ahead if you haven't yet. Finish that poll. And Anthony, when it seems like the poll has been completed, if there's a way to put up the results so people can see them, that would be awesome. All right. The poll question just went up. So just one person from each co-op, go ahead and put in the answer for your co-op. Again, thank you for your patience. I apologize. My computer decided to do updates for some reason while we were doing this. So I feel bad about that. Sorry for any of the problems that technical difficulty caused for you, but we're here. We're going to keep on going. So here's the result. Strong cultural resistance was fairly high. The changing workforce demographics and the impact that has on knowledge transfer ranked out the highest at 52%. Um, Alarming mental health trends was 7%. Complex regulatory compliance with significant resource demands was at 7%. So the changing workforce demographics and strong cultural resistance to new safety practices and mindsets, those were the two that stand out as here in MRET's landscape as the top challenges that we are facing. The one that wasn't there was the stubborn, consistent incident rates. So that is going to help us now moving on. What I'd like to do next is talk to you about how uh, mental fitness can significantly help address these challenges. But before I can do that, I need to briefly explain how does mental fitness work. What mental fitness does is it brings together a lot of neuroscience and some psychology, and it's based on factor analysis research. And this was conducted by Positive Intelligence, the company that certified me as an independent mental fitness coach. And because the findings are based on factor analysis, they get to the foundational root causes of how to build mental toughness and fitness. And the benefit of this approach is it's radically simple. In fact, paying attention to only three elements, we call them mental muscles, can transform your culture for the better. First, we need to identify the mental hazards that we have, or positive intelligence calls these your saboteurs. We all have neural pathways that lead to the parts of our brain where we sabotage our own success and happiness. That's that negative side. And when we go there, we're hijacked by mental hazards that cause us to experience negative emotions like fear, anger, frustration, overwhelm, just to name a few. And these feelings are correlated with behaviors, negative behaviors, or inconsistent behaviors that don't measure up with the values and standards that we have. It's no wonder we don't perform at our best or enjoy our work when these appear. And we get hijacked by our saboteurs or mental hazards several times a day. There's only 10 saboteurs. And when working with a co-op, I've chosen to use the term mental hazards to communicate this concept. The bottom line is you have these, and so do I, and they run on autopilot. So we often aren't even self-aware that they're going on. Let's quickly mention all 10 of these. The first is what I call the critical crew chief. Positive intelligence calls it your judge saboteur. Everyone has the judge saboteur. It finds fault and proclaims everything is like bad, 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 wrong, 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 wrong. And it kicks up negative emotions and it prompts us to negatively judge in three directions. We judge ourselves negatively. You stupid idiot. Why can't you plan things better, Glenn? You should have thought of when your computer does updates, like that kind of inner self-talk and critical chatter in the brain. We judge others negatively and we judge circumstances negatively. And the critical crew chief causes much of our stress and frustration and negative emotions. Now, here's how these three modes of the judge work. When we judge ourselves, we're being very self-critical. When we judge others, we end up being critical of others. And there's safety risks to this. The safety risk for judging self negatively is that it erodes our confidence and it leads to hesitation and poor decision making. Um, when we judge others negatively, it focuses on what's wrong with others rather than appreciating what's good. And we and that erodes trust and collaboration, and it creates barriers to speaking up or listening up about a potential safety hazard. And the judge of circumstances insists that a circumstance or outcome is bad, closing off our ability to see the possibilities that exist with what's going on. And the safety risk here is it creates a negative atmosphere that discourages proactive problem solving. So, in addition to the critical crew chief, there are 9 secondary mental hazards, which positive intelligence calls accomplice saboteurs, because after the judge makes you feel bad about something, it's going to recruit one of these other saboteurs to solve the problem. And in the long run, they always make it worse. I'm going to simply name each one and give you a short description. And as you're going to get a chance to do a little self-assessment later on about and find out which ones bother you the most. For now, as I go through this in alphabetical order, just consider which ones you see in yourself. The first is called the avoider, and it focuses on the positive and pleasant to an extreme, avoiding difficult and unpleasant tasks or conflicts. The controller is an anxiety-based need to take charge and control situations and people's actions in order to shape them to our own will. So that's the controller. The hyperachiever is dependent on constant performance and achievement for self-respect and self-validation. The hyper-rational is the intense and exclusive focus on rational processing of everything, including relationships. The hypervigilant includes a continuous intense anxiety about all the dangers and all the unhealthy preoccupation with what could go wrong. The pleaser indirectly tries to gain acceptance and affection by helping, pleasing, or flattering others. The restless saboteur is constantly in search of greater excitement in the next activity or constant busyness. Think of the fear of missing out on steroids. And the stickler is perfectionism and a need for order and organization too far. The final one is called the victim saboteur. And in my work with co-ops, I call it the hyper feeler. And it involves being emotional and temperamental as a way to get attention and affection from others. Now, I'm going to make a bold statement. Every challenge a co-op faces when it comes to building a strong safety culture is either caused by or negatively impacted by these saboteurs, yours and everybody else's. Guaranteed. And as a mental fitness coach, the main way I help organizations gain saboteur awareness for all their employees is a 2 to 4 hour workshop, like the one I did for MREA this summer. And um, strong mental fitness. If you want strong mental fitness, job one is to identify your top mental hazards because you have them. And job two is to call them out to yourself when you notice them interfering with your thoughts and emotions. It's like when you call it out and you notice them, it's like tripping a circuit breaker when it comes to overcoming self-sabotage. In other words, you name it to tame it. Of the 3 essential components of mental fitness, the first is saboteurs. The second is what we call self-command. The single best way to move from the saboteur regions of your brain to the positive regions of your brain is so simple, so versatile, and so practical. All you need to do is simply focus on one of your physical senses for at least 10 seconds. If any of you have experience with like mindfulness or progressive muscle relaxation, you'll be familiar with this concept. Studies have shown that just 10 seconds of focusing on one of your senses, sight, sound, breath, or tensing or releasing of your muscles, doing any of these ever so slightly calms the saboteur regions of your brain and activates the positive sage regions of your brain. If you want to build healthier relationships and work more aligned with your co-op's culture, mission, and values, taking a few seconds, or if your saboteurs really have you worked up, a few minutes if needed, to calm that part of your brain and activate the positive regions would uh, be known as a best practice. This is a hack, a how-to, a best practice for building mental fitness. And here's why this is so important. When we activate the region of our brain where our where we do our positive things, our positive emotions are felt, we tap into intuition, empathy, curiosity, creativity, deep purpose, and clear, calm, focused action. We're able to focus on the job at hand. I want to give you some self-command examples so you can see just how practical and helpful they are. Neuroscience doesn't have to be difficult. So let's start with the breath and tense muscles and release muscles. Um, these two were really helpful to me when I had to battle an anxiety or disorder in my life. Man, it would have been about 7, 8 years ago. I was pastoring a church, and all of a sudden, I was struggling with anxiety. It was impacting my sleep. It was impacting my ability uh, to stay focused on tasks. And there were, I get headaches, and I was struggling with that. I went to see a doctor to find out what was going on and found out I had an anxiety disorder. And part of the way they helped me, the treatment for that, there was medicine, which is great, but then I used breath and tensing and releasing muscles as a way to help with dealing with my anxiety. And so when I learned about these as mental fitness hacks to access the part of our brain where we do our best work, that was real natural for me. So I'd like you right where you are. Let's do these. If you want to close your eyes, most people get the most benefit from these if they close their eyes. But if you're not comfortable with that, you can keep them open. But what I'd like you to do now is we're going to just breathe and notice our breath. So use your nose to breathe and just take in a nice deep breath in and a nice deep breath out. And as you're breathing in and out, notice the rising and falling of your chest cavity. Focus on that sensation of breathing. Your mind's going to want you to be distracted and go think about other things. Just gently set all the other thoughts aside and come back and focus on the rising and falling of your chest cavity as you breathe. Just 3 breaths or about 10 seconds. Actually, if you hook your brain up to a functional MRI machine, shows there's a difference. The part of your brain where your mental hazards are starts to go a little darker, and the part of your brain where you do your best work and tap into your superpowers starts to light up. So that was breath. Let's do some tensing and relaxing of muscles. Where you're seated, go ahead and tense your fists. Just make real tight fists. And as you do that for 3 breaths, notice your muscles and that tension in those muscles in your hands and forearms. Okay, and your next breath, release. And now notice the difference in those muscles. Might have some tingling, might be a little warmer, definitely more relaxed. I hold a lot of tension in my shoulders. So one of my favorites with this, I try to touch, go ahead and join me in this. Try to touch your ears with your shoulder blades. Just hold that. It looks weird, doesn't it? Feel that tension. And now on the next breath out, release. Notice the difference in those muscles. When you're feeling stressed, just to stop for 10 seconds, and either breathe and notice your breath or tense and release some muscles is an anchor. That's one. Another one I want to tell you about is just using the sense of sound. A woman that went through the 7-week mental fitness mastermind with me, her name was Sydney. She was a new employee at a growing education company, and she would take walks in the morning, and she would practice using the sound anchors by listening for the birds singing in the trees as she walked. And that really helped her focus on that. And it really helped her tap into the part of her brain she wanted to be in when she went to work. Another guy, his name was Grant, was a beginning financial advisor. He struggled with cold calling and the financial pressures that starting that kind of business brought to him. And he was having trouble sleeping at night. And he, when he was at work, would listen for the farthest away sound that he could hear and use this kind of mental fitness rep to help him. So let's do that right now. Go ahead and in the room you're in, I want you to just listen for the farthest away sound that you can hear for 3 breaths. Now listen to the sound of your breathing as you breathe in and out of your nose. Notice the difference between inhale and exhale. Simple, right? Um, these simple little steps are affecting your brain and helping you to be able to handle challenges better and go to that part of your brain, take the neural pathways to the part of your brain where you can be creative and curious and focused. The next one of these senses I want to talk about is sight. There was a mom I worked with named Betsy, and when her children were being challenging, she'd focus visually on their hair or their facial features or the color of their eyes or the color of their clothes. What I'd like you to do right now is use this, pick some object in the room you're in and just look at it and notice like you're discovering it for the first time, the different colors and shades that are in that object for 3 breaths. Go ahead and do that. It's something you can do when you're out in a bucket or you're driving down the road and you realize you're distracted, or you are walking into a room and you're meeting somebody the first time and you sense you're feeling a little nervous. Simple and easy. That's the visual one. The last one I want to mention to you is touch. And for example, it's like even just rubbing 2 fingertips together to feel the ridges of your fingertips as you gently rub them together is a powerful little way of using touch to calm your mind down. I want to tell you about a woman named Amy. Amy was a flight nurse on the weekends. She was a mom who had a daughter, a preschooler that she took care of, while she also ran a business. And she was a solo business owner operator, and her daughter, little daughter, was with her. And Amy was really busy. Her husband had a job where he worked the night shift. So she was alone during the day when she was working. And so one day she and her daughter came home from shopping, and as they came into the house, the door to the garage opened, and their dog, who wasn't supposed to go into the garage, escaped and ran through and got into the garage and ended up peeing all over the floor. And Amy got really upset. She went into the garage, she started yelling at the dog. She was feeling all frustrated and angry, and she was just grabbed a towel, started cleaning things up, was really in a bad mood because of this. And her judge saboteur was definitely telling her how awful this was. And her little preschooler came out and she said, Mommy. And she got down on her knees where her mom was and she rubbed her fingertips together like this. Because see, Amy had taught her daughter how to do these touch mental resets and anchor when she was either having a little temper tantrum and needed to calm down, or if it was bedtime and she was having trouble settling down. She had taught her these and she had learned as a preschooler, oh, when I do this, my mind feels better and I'm able to relax and move forward positively. And so now this little preschool girl came in when her mom needed to be reminded that touch and focusing on that touch for just a few seconds can completely change your mood and make things better. So, the first essential element and component of mental fitness is the ability to understand you've got saboteurs, these mental hazards, and be aware of them and call them out. The second is self-command and focusing on one of your physical sensations, which brings us to the third, and there are only three, which is your sage brain or your calm operator. And it's 5 powers. I use calm operator in my work with co-ops to describe this concept. And there are 5 questions that you can use as pathways to help navigate when you notice you've been upset or frustrated. You know what? I've been in a negative part of my brain. I want to go to a better headspace. You can use 5 questions that help tap into the 5 powers of this part of your brain. And that better headspace utilizes these 5 powers. They're powerful and single question tools can help shift your perspective and activate your calm operator's wisdom. I'd like you to think of a challenging situation you've been facing, and it's either stressing you out or it's frustrating you. Think about what that situation is and who's involved in it. Maybe picture their faces. What negative emotions have you been feeling because of it? And those negative feelings are a clear indicator that you're in the part of your brain where your mental hazards are, not the part of your brain you want to use to successfully solve this problem. That part of your brain is what I call your calm operator. And as I run through these 5 simple questions, which are pathways to this part of your brain, think about which of the 5 questions would you want to use to address your challenge right now. The first is what we call the empathize power. And the question you ask here to tap into empathy is, what's it like to be in the other person's boots or shoes? What's this other person or the other people involved? What are they going through? Imagine how they are feeling right now and what they're thinking. And when we use that neural pathway, it helps us tap into this region of the brain where we can stop and be compassionate and kind and listen. And it builds empathy and trust, which is a strong foundation that we can work on to solve problems. And it makes everything easier. Not easy, but easier. The second power is called the explore power. And the pathway to more here is the pathway to more information. And the question you ask here to get more information is, what else might be true? You know how sometimes something happens and you immediately think you know the answer, or somebody else immediately thinks they know the answer. When you stop and go, well, wait a second, what else might be true? Just asking that simple question opens us up to be truth seekers. It sparks curiosity and it helps us fight assumptions like I'm right and I know I'm right instead of considering the whole picture. The next sage power is called the innovate power. It's the pathway to alternative solutions. And the key question to ask here is, what's another way forward? So when you're feeling stuck or it's like it's not working, what you've been trying to do is just not working, stop and go, hey, well, what's another way forward? When we honestly ask this question, it sparks creativity and safe problem solving, and we think outside the box. and come up with new solutions. The fourth sage power is called the navigate power, and it brings clarity to chaos. Um, we ask the question to get from clarity to chaos. Like if you're feeling overwhelmed or it's just a lot of things are going on, stop and ask, what's going to matter about this situation a week from now? Or maybe you need to zoom out, say a year from now, or when I'm 80, looking back on how I handle this challenge today. What's going to matter then? Asking this question reconnects you to purpose and the bigger picture, and it guides you to make decisions that get you to a truly desired destination where you really want to go with regard to the problem and the relationships involved with this problem. The final aspect of your calm operator is uh, the activate power. In the midst of challenges, it's easy to get overwhelmed or to freeze and not know what's needed in the moment. And the simple question that takes you down neural pathways to get to needed action is, what's the one thing, not all the things, what's the one thing I need to do next? Asking that question turns uncertainty into clarity, which leads to smart, safe execution. The neuroscience behind this is that every time you use a neural pathway, you reinforce it. What fires together wires together, which makes it just a little bit easier to use that same pathway the next time you face a challenge. So, of those 5 questions, which one hit you like, oh, that's the one I would use to solve my challenge that I'm facing right now that sort of got me a little frustrated or upset? Which of those 5 questions, maybe there's more than one, would really help you navigate to a better headspace and get to a solution? I want to tell you about how I used these not too long ago. This summer, June 9th, Jill, my wife, and I, that's the day we got married. We That's in Minot, North Dakota, First Baptist Church in the basement. And Jill and I moved this summer from Fargo, North Dakota to Avon, Minnesota. And there was a morning when we woke up, we were feeling the pressure of a deadline. We had to get everything packed up for the movers. And this Saturday morning was a day that we had to get a lot of work done. And I woke up that morning. I'm a guy who's like, I got my list. I want to get things done and I want it to go, 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 go. But what I'd learned from the past is that when I get like that, what was happening is my mental hazard of being a hyper achiever would take over, and Jill would feel all kinds of pressure, like, oh, I do not like being with this guy right now. And she felt left out and she felt run over, and it was not good. And this morning, as I was getting ready, I was drinking some coffee, I realized, oh, I am getting this pressure. I feel this pressure to like get everything done as fast as possible. That was one of my mental hazards. And if I let that drive the bus, my beautiful wife is going to not like me the whole day, and it's going to be frustrating. So I caught it. I identified it and I caught it. And I did a few mental fitness reps. I did some mental resets, rubbed my fingertips together. And then when Jill came down, I asked that question of like, what's it like to be in her shoes? And I realized all of the things that needed to be done had to make her feel overwhelmed this morning. And as she started talking, she was talking about feeling pretty overwhelmed. And that made me think, okay, what what do I need to do to help Jill right now? Instead of like in the past, what I would do is I would just go and it's like, hey, we can't talk. I can't listen to you right now. We got so many things to do, and this talking is taking time. We got to go get stuff done. But I realized, oh, that's my hyperachiever saboteur. That's not helping the situation. And what was needed was I needed to slow down and listen and hear what was going on. I needed to ask the question, uh, what else might be true? not only do we have to get things done, but what else might be true here? And I realized what might be true is slowing down. And you know what? If we don't get everything done today, it's not the end of the world. The movers aren't going to be here for a week. And so asking that question helped me out. And then moving on from there, I'm going to check my message. Um, I want to make sure Anthony wasn't texting me. So I realized, oh, what Jill needs from me is to slow down and listen. So I did that. I listened. I put myself in her shoes and I got real curious. And then I started asking the question, what's another way forward? Well, another way forward would be instead of me, like I usually do, going and just like pounding stuff out, whether Jill was with me and helping me or not, another way forward would be to say, I want to do this with you. And I want you throughout this day to enjoy this process of packing everything up with me. So that was like, what's going to really matter a year from now, a week from now, was that this experience of packing things up made us closer as a couple, and Jill enjoyed it and enjoyed being with me, and she felt closer to me and I felt closer to her instead of feeling like distance and stressed out. And so when the time came to say, well, what do I need to do now? I stopped first and listened. And then I said, Jill, here's the deal. Today, usually in the past, I'd want to just like go as fast as possible. But what I want you to know is it's okay if we don't get everything done. And I want to do this with you, not separate from you. And if we'll get done what we do get done, and that is okay with me, nothing else matters. And you could just see her stress and her overwhelm just fall right off of her. And she gave me a hug and we started working, and we had the most productive day you can imagine, all because um, I used these 5 questions to help me figure out how to not be uh, a hyper achieve driven guy who is going to go with or without her, and figure out how to do this with her. And we've had a great move. So the 3 components to mental fitness are saboteur awareness, know what your mental hazards are, self-command, know how to slow your brain down and tell your brain to go, I want to go use these powers of my calm operator, my sage powers. And these 3 components create an operating system for your brain. Here's how I would describe it. I call it the I can model for safety, teamwork, and well-being. And job 1 is identify your hazards in real time. Job 2 is call out your hazards when you notice them. You name it to tame it. And job 3 is you anchor in the present moment. That's A, by focusing on a physical sensation, whatever works best for you, to quiet your hazards and activate your calm operator. And job 4 is to navigate to a better headspace. And you just use those 5 questions to access your superpowers of your calm operator. As a certified mental fitness coach, the way I help individuals or groups install this mental fitness operating system is I take them through a 7-week mental fitness mastermind. And this is truly transformational for those who engage in it. Your brain gets rewired to the point it's noticeable in MRI imaging. A co-op can build on that foundation by having an executive or management team go through the mental fitness power team modules as well, but really getting people with common language to build safety culture, and mental fitness, bringing that to our safety culture. Now, I want to walk you through using mental fitness to strengthen your safety culture at your co-op by looking at, according to the research, those 5 challenges and what could be if mental fitness were used to address it. So let's talk about the number 1 or number 2 of our group here. We identified one of the challenges to a strong safety culture is cultural resistance. Research on organizational culture change reveals that safety culture transformation is among the most difficult types of organizational change to achieve. Why? Well, because it requires modifications to fundamental values and beliefs and behaviors that have developed over many years. The challenge is compounded in rural electric cooperatives by strong traditions of independence and self-reliance and technical expertise that tend to create resistance to new approaches. Cultural barriers to safety improvement show up in different ways, often really subtle. And they may, because they're so subtle, they're difficult to identify. For example, they include things like a lack of trust between management and workers, climates of fear that discourage reporting of safety concerns or near miss incidents, leadership reluctance to delegate decision-making authority, and limited employee involvement in safety program development. Each of these barriers represents deeply rooted cultural patterns that influence how people think about and respond to safety initiatives. They often operate below the level of conscious awareness, like an iceberg. They are so significant, but we only see a little bit on the surface. And therefore, they prove resistant to traditional persuasion or training approaches. The challenge of behavioral change in safety contexts is complicated by the fact that many unsafe behaviors aren't the result of ignorance or carelessness, but they represent rational, totally rational responses to what people perceive the organization's priorities are. So there's time pressures and reward systems that if a worker consistently observes that productivity and efficiency are rewarded, while safety behaviors that slow down work um, are discouraged, they're going to naturally adapt their behavior to align with perceived organizational values. Like we get this done as fast as we can, regardless of official safety policies or training programs. These behavioral adaptations often become deeply ingrained habits that operate automatically. They run on autopilot, invisible to self-awareness. Well, in my training and experience as a certified mental fitness coach, I've come to learn that negative forms of cultural resistance are always driven by mental hazards. To make this practical, I've created a mental hazard assessment focused on noticing how our saboteurs hijack safety culture. If you turn to page 7 in your handout, and in that handout, you'll notice there's an introduction, and it explains that this assessment is designed to help rural electric cooperative employees identify which mental hazards or saboteurs cause cultural resistance for you as an individual around your safety culture. And this is based on the positive intelligence framework and adapted specifically for the unique challenges faced in utility work. This tool is going to help you recognize patterns that might be undermining your safety culture. And it's going to help you identify your top mental hazards when it comes to that culture. Remember, every single one of us has saboteurs. And if you extrapolate that out, um, and think about how that interferes with everybody's work at your co-op, you can begin to understand how profound of an impact on safety culture these saboteurs have, and how powerful the positive change is going to be when you help your employees see them and better understand how to quiet them. So use the next 10 minutes to take the mental hazards self-assessment. And go ahead, starts at page 7, work through that, and you see the timer that's running. Just go ahead and rate each one and do the scoring and figure out which are your top ones. Go ahead. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat. All right, take about 30 seconds to wrap up where you're at in the work. If you weren't all the way done, don't feel bad. You can just go back later after this keynote. You can finish it at a time that works well for you. But take the last 30 seconds and get your results. Go back and see everything and choose for you, at least today, what mode of the critical crew chief do you have to deal with the most when it comes to safety culture? And then which is your top secondary mental hazard? All right, as you wrap up that work, these interfere with your safety culture and behavior as a co-op and for you specifically as an individual. And what I'd like you to do is just take a few seconds and go ahead and share your results. What was your top critical crew chief mode, and what was your top secondary mental hazard with a person sitting next to you? If you're in a large group, if you're in a small group, you can each share, take a couple minutes and each just sort of share which yours were. And if you're by yourself, just throw down the results into the chat and then take the remaining time to just journal a little bit and capture a few notes about how you see these mental hazards influencing your work. So take 2 minutes and just share with somebody in the room with you or do some reflective work on your own. All right, thanks for doing that. I hope that helps you learn just a little bit more and hopefully you see a little bit the impact that these mental hazards can have on work and on safety. Because you see, once they're established, they can persist even when we know better and want to do the right thing. These when these hazards come and hijack us, it doesn't matter what we know and what the right thing is and what we even want to do with that. It's sort of like it pushes us. So we need to recognize them and calm them down, call them out and call them, name them to tame them so we can do what we want to do and adhere to our values and our procedures. This explains these mental hazards explain why traditional safety training approaches can sometimes, which focus on knowledge transfer and conscious decision making, can sometimes fail to achieve sustained change. It's because our saboteurs get in the way. So go ahead and like we've been working here for a while. Take one big stretch. You don't have to do a mental reset with this and anchor, but uh, move a little bit. We got a half an hour that we're gonna land this plane, and I want you to really be able to pay attention. And we're gonna talk about not only what is going on when it comes to these challenges that we face, but also what could be at our co-op if we tackle these challenges really well. And I'm going to spend most of my time talking about this first one, cultural resistance, and then the changing workforce demographics. The other three, since they were a lot lower scores, I'll spend a lot less time on. So, um, what could be? What if? What if understanding specific mental hazards was a common part of our cooperatives, and people were able to see what's going on? Think about the difference that could make when it comes to safety. For example, if we're able to catch our critical crew chief, the safety danger is it creates a climate of judgment and criticism that prevents psychological safety needed for reporting concerns and bringing up continuous improvement. Um, the avoider, it prevents addressing safety issues they before they become serious incidents, and we're afraid of bringing it up. So we avoid it. The controller causes problems, and it creates dependence rather than developing critical thinking in others. And people become dependent on one person instead of everybody owning and learning and developing. The hyperachiever sacrifices thorough safety procedures for productivity metrics. The hyperrational can ignore human factors and emotional components essential to safety culture. The hypervigilant creates an analysis paralysis that prevents timely decision making and generates mental fatigue. The pleaser undermines safety standards by prioritizing harmony over speaking up. The restless prevents full implementation of safety initiatives before moving on to the next because we're a little bored and we're restless. The stickler creates unrealistic standards that discourage everybody from participating in safety culture. And the hyperfeeler allows emotional reactions to override rational safety approaches and prevents people from taking the personal accountability and proactive safety improvement measures that they otherwise could. What if our employees knew and understood their mental hazards? What if that self-awareness helped them stay focused when they would otherwise be distracted, rushed, or complacent? What if CEOs and managers and supervisors not only modeled this self-awareness by pointing out when their mental hazards had hijacked them, but also gave their teams permission to call out when they thought they saw the leaders' saboteurs negatively impacting safety in any given moment? What if leaders empowered their teams and crews to not only notice their own mental hazards, but also encourage them to simply mention it and speak up and ask for a short break to do a mental reset so they can snap out of it and get back to doing the great safe work that they usually do? The concept of psychological safety is central to effective cultural change in safety contexts. Psychological safety um, refers to the shared belief that individuals can express concerns, admit mistakes, suggest improvements without fear of negative consequences. When there is a common language around mental hazards and self-awareness of how they impact us, we create the conditions for psychological safety to thrive. In fact, when people across all industries invested the time to go through the 7-week mental fitness program and followed up with that, their mental fitness team's development, 98% experienced emotional intelligence growth. That meant 87% reported greater self-awareness, 87% reported they were better at relationship management, 87% improved their self-management skills, and 85% improved their social awareness. And that included serving others and empathy. So that is the first cultural resistance to safety changes and safety culture. That's the first one. Let's move on, and we'll real quickly just talk about the potential impact of mental fitness on the rate of electrical contact incidents. These are caused, we know, often by fatigue or complacency or other external stressors. And we get we get distracted by our saboteurs and our mental hazards our saboteurs. Not only do they distract us and they get us thinking in ways we that aren't helpful in safety contexts, they suck energy from us. I heard one author talk about these, and he called them energy vampires. It's exhausting to do our work when our mental hazards, are driving the bus. So, despite significant investments in time and safety training, equipment improvements, and procedural enhancements, the rate of electrical contacts incidents have it's remained same or only gone down a little bit. And we want to see that improve. So What could be if we were to equip our people with the ability to understand how to tap into those uh, calm operators and operator powers and be able to use those questions to navigate to a better headspace. What if, when people were distracted or fatigued or had an issue with complacency and tasks became routine and it was easy to drift off, what if they were able to use the anchors that we were talking about earlier to be able to move from being fatigued and exhausted or overwhelmed, and to move instead to being able to do their work? Well, here's the kinds of results that people who put the effort in were able to accomplish. 91% manage stress better. 90% use mental and emotional energy more effectively. 85% increase their happiness, and 83% improve self-confidence. How much would the safety culture of your co-op improve if 91% of your employees um, were able to manage stress better, and 90% focus more effectively, and 85% were feeling more positive about their lives, and 83% more confident? That's the difference it can make when it comes to contact incident rates. Um, what about the changing workforce? This is the top one that was indicated today in the poll. We're faced with several challenges due to a changing workforce in the industry right now. The significant demographic changes are happening at both ends of the career. Current demographics reveal a stark generational divide, which has profound implications for keeping safety culture strong. While retirements are slowing a little bit, workers eligible for retirement within the next 5 years comprise about almost 10% of the utility workforce. At the same time, rural electric cooperatives are experiencing a rapid influx of younger workers. Significantly, 25% of all cooperative employees were under the age of 32 in 2022, creating both opportunities and challenges for safety culture development. These younger workers bring different expectations, communication preferences, and learning styles to safety culture development. The challenge is compounded by concerning um, turnover patterns among younger employees, with 60% of non-retirement attrition occurring in the 23 to 37 age demographic. The implications for safety culture are profound. Effective safety culture depends on deep institutional knowledge, shared values, and experienced mentorship. In other words, culture is more caught than taught, and that takes time. More than 55% of utility employees have been in their role less than 10 years of service, and that proportion is rising to 60% for critical positions such as engineers and line workers. Much of the critical safety knowledge, which is highly specialized and context dependent, takes years to pass along to new hires. What could be with mental fitness when it comes to these challenges of a changing workforce? What if all employees at your co-op were able to develop and strengthen the neural pathways that make it easier for young and old, seasoned and new, female and male, to empathize with whoever is standing in front of them at any moment? This mental strength of empathy makes it so much easier to address generational differences and create effective mentorship relationships. What if they have spent time honing their ability to show empathy, enabling them to, your employees, to genuinely understand and appreciate different perspectives, different communication styles, learning preferences of different generations? What if our experienced workers were more effective mentors, able to understand where younger generations were coming from and able to adapt to the learning preferences of younger employees while maintaining high safety standards? What if our Younger employees were able to appreciate more experienced workers for the wisdom and hard-earned expertise that comes from years in the field of experience, making them more open, these younger employees, to learning from older generations of workers. What if mental fitness was able to create a common language and framework that transcends generational differences while at the same time values the unique contributions that different age groups bring to safety culture and development? It is possible. Again, when people across different age demographics, cultures, and industries have gone through the 7-week mental fitness program, relationships improve. Imagine what these kinds of gains would do to improve relationships across your co-op, irrespective of age. 97% indicate they've improved empathy. 96% are better at teamwork and collaboration. 84% are better at conflict management, and 76% improve the ability to develop others. All right, so let's talk about just a couple of more of these mental hazards. The mental health trends that are currently our utility workers are facing, and everybody that works in a rural electric cooperative. Recent research reveals alarming trends in psychological well-being among utility professionals. 33% experiencing anxiety over the previous year. 26% reporting excessive stress levels. And perhaps most concerning, nearly 1/3 of utility workers continue working despite it. They say they're experiencing mental illness, compromising both individual well-being and safety performance. And why would somebody do that? The answer is these same workers indicate they're afraid of the potential stigma of being seen as weak, defective, or unfit for service, and they don't trust that there's adequate support systems within the industry to help them work through that. And on top of that, we have to deal with our phones. I call them weapons of mass distraction that add fuel to the flame of contributors to mental illness in our culture today. So what could be? Let's talk about what could be here really quickly. When people work on their mental fitness, 91% report that they manage stress better. 90% say they use mental and emotional energy more effectively. And the 85% report they're happier, and 83% improve self-confidence. Think about the impact those gains would make in job satisfaction and employee retention, let alone the ability to communicate well about what's really going on with us. And the final challenge was that regulatory compliance and resources that are limited. And what we notice is that in rural electric cooperatives, often limited staffing means employees are wearing several hats, trying to do lots of different jobs, and the amount of time and energy and the cost of making sure we're up to speed with the regulations, that sheer volume of complexity around all of that can lead to having no time or budget left for building and nurturing safety culture. One thing that happens when we're overwhelmed and those budget constraints kick in, and on top of that, we've got geographic dispersion of operations, trying to get the culture to everybody at all of the locations from which we do our work is a big challenge. But what if we helped everybody improve their mental fitness? Here's what could be with strong mental fitness. What if by increasing our mental toughness and resilience in simple and repeatable ways across the co-op, we could be more proactive rather than reactive? What if we trained our people how to be more creative and innovative when facing all the complexity? What if we were training our leaders and employees to see adversity, challenge, or outcome, every one of those that they encounter, as an opportunity or a gift to learn and improve and get better? And what if they knew and utilized a simple, repeatable mental system to do just that, either as individuals or in collaborative teams? What if by investing in our people to help them install that simple, repeatable mental fitness operating system, our workforce became more resilient, focused, energized, and engaged? Imagine how much that could improve efficiency across the co-op. So as I come to the end here, um, the results of building mental fitness again are strong. And you can see the numbers in the screen. Obviously, mental fitness, like physical fitness, isn't developed in a day or at a keynote or going to a conference. It's developed one step at a time, improving and getting 1% better each day. So, what next step should you take and your co-op take to improve mental fitness to enhance your safety culture? Let's look at next steps you can take as an individual and as a co-op. We'll start as your co-op. One thing I'd suggest is, well, now that you've got this information, schedule a meeting, discuss what the right next step is for developing safety culture at your co-op, and then make a decision and commit to it. Second, take advantage of MRET's matching grant. I love to hear earlier today that Anthony said several have been received and approved for this next year. I'd love to help you with this as well. Great next steps that I offer to utilizing that matching grant could be bring me into improve safety culture by delivering a keynote or a workshop, or to work with your linemen in bringing mental fitness to them in a workshop, and then delivering short little tips by text every day for 6 months to reinforce what they learn. A final way would be to lead by example. Your people know safety is truly important when you see you practicing what you preach. Here's how I can help with that. Take your leadership or management team through the 7-week program and install the mental fitness operating system as a team and learn it, see how it helps you. And then we can figure out how to use that mental toughness and bring that to your co-op and the right steps at the right amount of time. I believe what I do, I started this keynote by saying, I believe what I do can enhance what you're doing. Let me. I'm eager to meet you, hear what your needs are at your co-op, and see if I might be the right person to help you take a right next step. There's a QR code that you see on the screen. You can use that to go ahead and just sort of let me know what you're thinking. So maybe figure out who's the right person at your co-op to take a shot of that QR code. And then there's a very short form, takes 2 minutes to fill out, and that'll get me in contact with you, and we can, and let me know what you're interested in, and we can move that conversation down the road and look at what I could do to help you enhance your safety culture. So that's the next step as a co-op. What about individually? I want you to be able to leave today and realize there's something you can take from today and the time you spent here to help improve your own mental fitness. One would be to practice something you learned today and commit to every day doing that, whether it's intercepting and calling out your mental hazards when they arise and trying to do that every single day, catch your top critical crew chief mode or your top mental hazard, that secondary one, or maybe practice anchoring yourself using one of those mental resets that help you anchor in the present moment and saying, you know what, every single day I'm going to set my alarm to go off every 2 hours. I'm going to just stop and do those, knowing I'm activating the calm operator part of my brain when I do that. Maybe you want to dig in and learn more about the saboteurs you have. There's a free 5-minute saboteur assessment, and that's what the QR code on this screen is for. And take that free saboteur assessment. This one, over 1 million people around the world have used it, so it's really dialed in, and it'll help you understand not just that work with safety, but your whole life. Which saboteurs mess with you the most, and how can you get to know what they are and know what you can do to work with them and deal with them. And then finally, if you really want to build mental fitness and go deeper with it, reach out to me. and we can talk about going through the 7-week mental fitness program to install the whole mental fitness operating system for yourself. Go ahead and think about which of these three, do something, okay? Which of these three could you commit to? Circle at least one on your handout if you've got it with you. Otherwise, just make that decision for yourself. Your mind is your number one safety tool. Let's learn how to use it and use it really well. All right. What are there any questions that people have here with the little time that is remaining? Go ahead and throw those into the chat. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for the good work that you do at your co-ops. And thank you for your commitment to safety. It really matters. Anthony, have any questions you noticed or anything? Otherwise,
Not as of right now, just a couple recommendations and some thank yous coming into the chat.
yep.
We'll stick around till about 10:05. I'll
Yeah.
keep the webinar going. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to stay here as long as anybody